Welcome everyone to the first episode of the Crossover Show, the annual Year in Tech wrap-up show. I'm your host, Fatu, and I'm so excited to be here today. It's been a hell of a year, and we're covering the headlines that made the year with the people that know Africa's ecosystem best. We're talking top 5 everything across 5 different segments. The first segment is top 5 media moments. Honorable Minister Bosun Tijani's appointments, Easter Dips acquisition, RiceVest acquires Shaka, Lemfi's $33 million Series A raise, and Flutterwave cleared of money laundering charges in Kenya. I'm going to go to you, Ogo, first because Bosun is your peer. He's also someone that you know really closely. Of course, when his appointment was made, even before it became official, there was a lot of chatter and a lot of noise based on past tweets that he had made that became politicized. So what did you think about it? Because in my mind, I thought, he is of the ecosystem. He was co-founder and CEO of CC Hub. So it's a net good for the ecosystem. So what did you think about people's reactions to it and his appointment?
So I think my reaction when I heard the rumor, I thought it was going to be impossible, understanding the political landscape, that a state has to bring one minister and someone that was, as of then at least, was a political outlier for him to have been chosen. But I would say it was a positive development to see that it actually went through, right? And so for the first time, we're seeing someone, we have been here from the time of Mobala Jose to Shitu to Pantami, right? So this was the first time someone from within who was theoretically and practically, I would say, prepared for the role, right? So CC Hub was the focal point, and it had a lot of community building initiatives which they had done. There were a lot of, let's say, human capacity stuff they had done. They had touched a bit in investing. They had played across. And of course, Bosun went ahead and did a PhD, right, in something that had to do with innovation. So I would say he was prepared. So I think it was a positive surprise. But of course, there was a lot of noise around the political aspects of the confirmation of his statements that I had made before. But for me, it was irrelevant. I then, because then and now are two different things. But as at then, I thought they were fortunate. It was more or less a favor to give a lot of credibility. Because usually these appointments go to people that are politically loyal versus people that are really competent. So for me, it was a plus, right? I think it's still a plus that they brought the technocrats into that role. And I really hope he succeeds because it now justifies it. The fact that you know what to do doesn't mean you do it right. So the jury will still be out. So far, I think the moves have been positive. So it's just to make sure we maintain the direction in which we're going. That is someone that has the leverage and doing what is required in the ecosystem.
100%. And of course, Bosun has been about this ecosystem life. He breathes his life. And he was made to apologize for his past tweets. What did you think about all of that, especially from a PR perspective? Because many people thought, of course, he had to apologize. So what did you think about the entire process leading up to his confirmation?
It made sense that he apologized, and I think he did it very well. There was a level of humility, and then you just move on. Yep, so now he is free to just do the job, and he's been in the role for some time, and he should just hit the ground running. And exactly as O said, he has the leverage. And, we talk a lot about tech OGs. Bosun really is one. He is. He's been in it since day one. And he has that experience in terms of community building. He understands the tech space. He also understands big business. I think he had kind of forged collaborations with Google as well. So he really understands that kind of connection between public and private spaces, but is also now willing to kind of build a community around that. And this, idea of then training, I think, 3 million young people in technology skills, that's going to have far greater reach across the wider Nigerian landscape. It's not just tech. It's actually going to have a net positive effect on the entire economy as well. So he made his apology, he moves on, and he now will just be known for what he's doing in the role.
Yeah, I hope that we also get to move on too. And Jude, so I know one of the big things that he's going to be driving as well is the startup bill. And I remember speaking to Kola Aina about the details of that bill. And one of the things he said was that they were going to just make sure that startups are supported. So with Bosun's appointment, do you think that just in terms of foreign investors invested in startups in Nigeria specifically because of him being at that position? Do you think it's something that's likely going to drive that forward?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's definitely been something I've been advocating for as I'm speaking to LPs myself, saying that we finally have someone in a position to enable people feel a bit more comfortable, like their interests are going to be protected. I think one thing that comes up over and over again is that, look, my money's going to go in and it's not going to come out. And I think a lot of measures have been put in place as part of the Startup Act, to ensure that foreign investors feel like actually that's not going to happen.
Okay. And Ben, of course, you are heavily on the media side, and you covered a lot of the noise that surrounded Boston's appointment. And of course, lots of people thought, okay, we'll let this slide, not like they had the power to anyway, but we'll let this slide just to see what positivity he brings to the ecosystem. So what did you think about all of that chatter that was happening at the time?
Yeah, I think just to even give you some context, I had the bit of experience with Boston when it was in CC So I think for people who are younger in the ecosystem, there's an aspiration that, if you do your work in the private space, you could possibly get recognized in the public space and get an appointment without being, like what Oyo said, a political loyalist. So I think Boston's appointment to younger people in the ecosystem or to people who are startup operators, just gives some kind of kudos and like credibility. In terms of like the media chatter, when I actually congratulated him on Twitter, which is now X, and then people were coming for me because they don't like political or like public officials because they feel like, the system in which they find themselves in don't allow them to perform even if they are well-intentioned. But I think so far, I like the momentum I've seen from him. I like the fact that he feels accountable. Like nobody's going to chase him with a stick if he doesn't give us his weekly updates. But I think, it's a bit encouraging for me and people who support him.
I just wanted to point out something very important. So while we're all very positive, we need to start holding to account, right? And what I want to make sure doesn't happen is the personalization of an institution, right? So there are not too many Bostons that have the combination of his theoretical and practical knowledge. So the question will be, what are things that are being institutionalized? Because he's one shuffle. If he's so good, then why don't they take him to the Petroleum Ministry or the Educational Ministry? What happens when the next person is not like Boston, is not from the ecosystem? So the questions will now start being asked. I would wait for the first budget to pass before we start asking for those things. But will be a lot of institutional changes are being made. Most of the things that are being done are Boston driven, right? I want to see the role NIDA is playing. I want to see the role other institutions are playing. I want to see the role other players in the ecosystem are playing as a result of policy changes. So those are the things we'll be starting looking out for. So honeymoon, right? 2024, we'll start asking questions.
Okay, so honeymoon ends December 31st.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Possible, you heard that. Okay, so InstaDeep's acquisition. Tunisian bought InstaDeep, founded by Karim and Zara Slim in 2014, got acquired by BioNTech for £562 million, is what here, $680 million for the rest of the world. So the acquisition was a mix of cash and an undisclosed amount of BioNTech shares. But I think one of the things that really stood out for a lot of people here was everybody kind of thought that regarding the AI revolution, that Africa was kind of being left behind, right? But with BioNTech's acquisition of InstaDeep and also all the work that NVIDIA is doing with African startups as well right now, it looks like we are literally matching with the world while this is happening. And I'm going to come back to you as well because we had a conversation just prepping for this show. And you said something about, what this also meant for the general AI movement in the tech ecosystem. So do you think we're going to see more of this or more investments in the AI field in Africa as a whole?
So AI is a multiplier. So technology is a multiplier. It allows processes become more efficient. Then AI just takes it on steroids, right? But I think what I like about InstaDeep is, so I met Karim probably 2019 or 18, and he has an office in Lagos, right? So we're not talking of an office last week. We're talking of an office that helped build this system, right? Then they used to be in, I don't know if I should disclose where the office was, but somewhere in Ikeja, right? And it means that unlike before, in those days when movies used to come out in the 90s, our aunties would come 10 years later, it was new, or when people were using the arbitrage of eBay, people didn't understand that was eBay and were on the internet maybe 10 years later. As we can see from things like Clubhouse, we can see from crypto, Africans are just close followers now. They're there on day one. So unlike other types of technology that have been revolutionary, AI, we're adopting it on day one.
Yeah.
Some Altman was in Nigeria to try, I don't know whether I was coming to harvest ice for WorldCoin or he was coming to propagate the AI story, right? But more importantly, what I'm just trying to say is that we're going to be seeing Africa at the fore of this. Mm-hmm. And we can always see it with like we're talking of with Instatips acquisition that was actually built with a lot of Nigerian talent. Of course, Karim is Tunisian, lives in the UK, I think he has access to France, but I think it's very cool that we now have an African element, right? To show that we can play from day one. We're ready for prime time.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And with you, Jazz, I mean, you support and work with a ton of startups. And one of the things that I've also noticed as well is, apart from startups that are literally like AI startups, some of them are also incorporating and integrating a lot of these AI tools into the work that they do. So are you seeing a lot of that now? Are you noticing that shift within the ecosystem?
There has been a shift in our conversations with the startups that we work with. Yep, absolutely. I think they'll have to, right, if they want to continue to be competitive. I think, AI has become a bit of a buzzword. I think last year it was machine learning, maybe. Yeah. I'm sure there'll be another one next year as well. But the Institute story is a fantastic, a necessary story for the ecosystem as well. We're talking about exits and acquisitions. It brings more money into the ecosystem. Yeah, and it kind of shows that that there are companies worth investing in as well.
Yeah, 100%. So the third big media moment, RiseVest acquiring Shaka, that was a very surprising one. And full disclosure, and any investor in RiseVest, and okay, well, I found out for everybody else did, but yeah, just generally the ecosystem, it was very exciting news. So RiseVest, of course, is a wealth management platform, and they acquired Shaka, which is a digital trading platform. I tried to get the figures out of the CEO of Rise, aka the room. He did not tell me nothing. I said, will you tell me if it's 6 figures, if it's 7 figures, with 8, 9? He said he would tell me nothing. But right now, both companies are saying that their products will remain separate. They will carry on with their product roadmap separately. And of course, by next year, they will decide or find out what exactly it is that they're going to do. So I'm going to start with you, Jazz. I know they keep asking questions about where are the exits? And so far, for some people, they think exits from the international environment, right? But here we're seeing it actually happen within the ecosystem. So do you think this is a net positive for?
Yeah, absolutely, because also it's kind of combining two companies and they can grow and scale and then look to larger exits elsewhere, whether or not that's, across from the continent or internationally as well. So I think it can only be a good thing as well. And again, reducing costs, pooling talent, often it's easier and quicker and faster to acquire than it is to build yourself as well. So it was a shrewd move.
Okay. What did you think?
So that's always to look at it, right? Because I know the people involved, I'm somewhat positive. No, there's no hint of negativity. I've known Rise from very, very early days. It's very solid companies, right? I think the question is, what are the details, right? We need to have the details. So I wouldn't blame the founders because they want to keep things under and keep building. So I would say the journalists have not done their job.
I tried, but I'm not a journalist.
Because the people who is ready. So we should find out from people that were there in the negotiations, where are the lawyers who are a bit unscrupulous, that would disclose a few things, right? So we need to know the details on that. All exits are not equal. So this is not a liquidity event, right? But this is a positive in the sense that we're seeing people minimize costs instead of going after the same customers, right? Yeah. Koga and Jumia, they pumped 100 million trying to sell to the same 100,000 people, right? Give all their money to other Facebook and the rest. Right, doing ads, trying to shortchange themselves, right? So the good thing is that we're now seeing that people are saying, "Oh, we can now collaborate." So what's next? Let me not preempt certain names, but is there a possibility that rather than both of you undercutting your margins to try and sell to the same customers? Can you collaborate?
Yeah.
So I think from that angle, it's very positive. We need to see more mergers. We have too many small companies, and everybody wants to be the VP of sales of a team of 3 people, right? So if we start seeing people merge and combine, and we'll start seeing more efficient companies moving.
Okay. Okay. June, so of course, you invested in other startups, and I thought these kinds of views make investors very happy. So, like, what did you think about that happening?
I mean, again, without the details, it's hard to know, what exactly went down. But I can imagine ultimately it's better for the customer. So I think ultimately they're going to be getting better products. Maybe the profitability for the business will get better. So it's a win-win all around.
Yeah, I know. I mean, one of the things that he did mention was it was a mix of equity and cash, but like that was all I was told. Ben, do you have any insider skills stories?
Some people can famous for it. Well, like, I don't have any additional scoop on that. I think for me, I would just be concerned as to why they called it an acquisition. Because it felt like both companies were about the same stage, same level. And, the name Better would have sounded better to me, like if it was like peer-to-peer kind of dealing. So maybe like, I don't know, Price, they meant to be the bigger player. A little bit of them maybe into the kind of business model or
maybe somebody paid the other, sorry.
Yeah, maybe. So, because I think one of the things that I've heard AK talk about was his choice of model, which is something that maybe future startups in the investment tech or investment app space can learn from is he didn't think that Africans wanted to trade by themselves, right? They didn't have the required know-how, etc. So he was offering them a packaged like an advice, to say, oh, this is your real estate package, do this and we'll sort of guarantee you some kind of return or percentage, right? But then some of the other investment apps were allowed people to buy stocks, the day trading, and if we as the consumer, that's not my job to be a day trader then. So I think like for anybody else than looking at the M&A, they can learn from both companies' approach to the market and see if there's anything that they can include when they're building something else in this space. Or like my own consideration was like both companies would like to be the same stage that so without being like a merit.
Big media moments. Lemfi raising $33 million Series A. In a world where investors are tightening their purse strings, Lemfi raised Series A $33 million to power financial services for immigrants. Is Fintech going to Uber?
So we look at it from the angle of problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people just ended up trying to do the same thing, collect money from merchants, etc. And Lemfi, formerly Lemonade, I think they were the first to boldly say we're building a bank for the diaspora, right? Beneath immigrants or immigrant diaspora, depending on how you're looking at it. So they were a pioneer. Anything that has to do with commerce is moving of funds in one way or the other. When you're doing B2B, B2C, B2B2C, cross-border, inter, whatever type of combination. So Nigeria that does this $30 billion remittance, we don't have a unicorn remittance company. That was very questionable. So of course, Ridwan and Ryan, ex-OP, ex-Flutterwave, ex-Hotel.ng, right, and ex-Uber. So I think they were the best position to try to tackle this, and he has executed exceptionally. He's an understated founder, and so I wouldn't say I was surprised, but it was pleasant to see if you do the right things, you would get people, you still get money coming for you, and it's helpful because the diaspora is a large contingent. And most of the times we have been building for the Africans at home. So probably this says that there's an opportunity to build for the Africans that are in diaspora. So it's a good signal. Yeah. It's a good signal. I wasn't surprised, but it was still pleasant to hear.
Okay. And Ben, do you think this is also kind of like a signal to 2024 and beyond that, okay, maybe there's a world where no?
At least we're not publishing as many Fintech fundraisers as like previous years.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the numbers, the funding landscape still declined like 35%, like this year over last year. Meanwhile, 2022 declined compared to 2021. A massive fintech round just helps to magnify the percentage that fintech occupies in the total fundraising landscape. So now we're looking at fintech as 50% of all the money that was raised this year, right? And that's because of strong and big ones like Lemfire. And like everybody else has said, I think the cross-border space is really, really interesting. And, next year we'll see a lot more coming up in that space. And when we see a lot more, of course, people have started doing cross-border stuff one time, right? Lemfire wasn't founded last year, like 2020. There's a couple of people, but I think next year, both investors and players will be looking to either consolidate or magnify their own position in that space. So anybody that's trying to get into the cross-border space that doesn't get in next year, then that window might be closed in the way interbanking was sort of closed 2019-ish. So that's my read on things. And Lemfire's round is just an indication of the appetite as well from the investors.
But I wonder also appetite at a later stage because there's more data to work with. Yeah, they've proven a lot more things out. So I suspect we'll see early stage still struggle a little bit.
I see. Okay. Last top 5 big media moments was Flutterwave being cleared of money laundering charges in Kenya. And they're on track to get their license. From what I know, they've scaled first approval. They will be they're expecting the second approval so they can get their license. And one of the interesting things that I thought was noteworthy was when the High Court, in granting the ARA, the Assets Recovery Agency's request to pull back or to just dismiss the case, the judge said to the ARA, had some words for the ARA and said it was inappropriate, negligent, reckless, and absurd to an investigative agency to commence such serious proceedings without having completed investigation. So they just thought it was very negligent the way they brought the case forward and couldn't carry on with it. So Jazz, what do you think in this particular scenario with what has happened? Now they're getting ready for an IPO next year, and this kind of news is good for them, right? What did you think about the entire situation, and now, of course, having that case dismissed?
Really good for Flutterwave and really good for everyone else, really. It doesn't suit anyone in the ecosystem for Flutterwave to be, stumbling like that as well. So I rate Flutterwave for being resilient, continuing to fight. That's helpful. I think it should be a warning signal to all the other fintech platforms across not just Nigeria, but across the whole continent not to forget about regulation and not to forget about the stakeholders as well. Because I think that sometimes, you get a lot of fintechs and they're trying to move so quickly that they kind of forget about the structures and stakeholders and the organizations and the politicians and the politicking around it as well. But as we saw in Kenya, one group can literally just derail. So Flutterwave did the right thing in terms of announcing it. They should be celebrating it, and then they have to move on because they've had a very, very, very busy news cycle over the last 12 to 18 months. But this can only be a positive for them.
Yeah, 100%.
So my position is simple, right? I need Flutterwave to win, whether I like them or not. It's what they call enlightened selfish interest, right? If Flutterwave or when Flutterwave IPOs, then it will be another pay stack movement. And hopefully we'll take advantage and people don't say, Flutterwave is so too early, right? So it's going to be an opportunity for us, right? And so it's good, right? I understand people want to hold them to account. They think they're a powerful company and everything. Externally, kudos. But internally, we that are biased, we should be biased because it affects us directly. I want GB to be the first tech billionaire. I want Flutterwave to be a $10 billion company because it's in my selfish interest to want it to happen, right? And hopefully we're seeing the company mature. Then in those days, it was move as fast as you can, or no matter what, right? But now, of course, just I said, that era has passed. But without such aggressive nature, we would not have been seeing them in the US, in Europe, and all those other things. So how do you balance aggressiveness with risk? I think they have found a way to get it right. What do you call it? What do they say? Seek permission later. I think they have been able to balance it, but now everyone has to be very careful. Everyone has to check them and hope that it gets to the IPO stage and it works out for them and it works out for all of us. I'm very, very biased.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And you, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I am, as you know, Jeff said, they have been on the news. I literally remember spending all night listening to a few like Twitter circles on the whole Plus Wave scandal. And it's nice to finally have some positive news coming, but it does mean that but there's a lot of responsibility now on them. I think that they're doing the right things. They're making some key hires. And it's a lesson to the next wave of startups that will come behind them and also have this sort of exit trajectory to put things in place much earlier on to prevent the Kenya situation from occurring again. Expansion across Africa is not easy, as we all know. But it's, just really thinking about it from the get-go. Okay. And Ben, brilliant thoughts. Leave your words.
Yeah. We did operationally, right? I think it's always hard to expand to another country. If you look at in the last month or so, Ghana came out to say, MP is operating illegally in Ghana. And if you think about a company like Empire, right, they've tried to get all the licenses in everywhere they've gone to, EMI in the UK, MSB in Canada, MSB in the US. So would you call that Ghana operation an oversight on the startup or something the regulator was just trying to fix after the fact? Like, I feel like because many of the regulatory policies and stuff are either gray or many of the regulatory stances might also be biased towards homegrown companies, you might have all these kind of things and people might be thinking, is there like a bias against international companies coming to a market? I think that's an angle that I heard at some point that, okay, for instance, in Kenya, they might be biased towards maybe against Nigerian founders or something like that. And I think that's an angle that startups who are building in this space need to figure out how to work so that they don't end up in the news for either a mistake from the regulator or be like a sheep that is being slaughtered for something that might be building. Right. Granted, startups should always take regulation like priority as we expand, but I'm just saying that like there are some things that might be out of their control and there's some other aspects or angles to this thing that we might be able to dig and explore further. That's my sense of everything.
Top 5 shocking startup shutdown. Pivo, 54G, Laserpay and Zazu. Hey, some of these when it hit the press was super surprising to a lot of people, especially because of the kinds of startups these are. So of course the first one, Pivo, backed by Y Combinator, 2 years old. They are a neobank for supply chain businesses and they raised $2 million recently. And of course, because you broke the news, right? After the first about article went out, you're feeling like waiting and got the weeds out of the story. So like, tell us about what really happened for their shutdown.
Yeah, I think personally, like the Pivo story is a bit sad to me because when I look at the stats on female founders and female CEOs, I feel like this has dealt a kind of blow. Of course, it's not going to be strong enough to wipe out all the good work everybody else has done. But 7% of female founders that like get funding, 13% female CEOs get funding, and then the whole Africa 1.2%, right? So that was sad. In terms of finding out more about the story, what we learned was that it wasn't actually mismanagement of funds, which is one of the things that has been in the headlines for all the other startups or many of the other startups that shut down. Instead, it was a co-founder conflict. And this is one that, investors had tried to help resolve, right? And it just did not work. So, personally, I feel, because after that story, someone called me, a female founder was like, just why would they do this, right? Female CEO founder, like, why would they do this? Because she says she wouldn't see male founders shut down a company because of this. Point is, the Pivo story, shutting down with co-founder commitment as a major contribution. Of course, there'll be some surrounding things. Is a bit sad, right? They couldn't agree on a couple of things. In one instance, one of the founders was said to bring in a relative, and from like a governance point of view, that could be a challenge. But also, did your co-founder agree to that? In another instance, a co-founder was said to be running a side gig, right? There are some things you don't just do. Like, you're already a funded company. You can't be trying to run a side gig, right? You're not like, yes, you bootstrapped. If you were running your side gig then, you can drop in now that you have people's money on board. and there were just a couple of things that, almost even devolved into more physical altercations, and like, it's just really a sad story for the ecosystem.
But why do you think that's always a thing that's pointed out whenever you get these kinds of news, right? Where people have to like point out the fact that this is like a female-led startup, right? Where if this was like happening with men, for example, people won't point out and say, oh, there's like a man thing that's happening, whether or not whatever it is that the stats represent. But like, why do you think we're always like happy on the fact that, oh, this and that?
It's a thing about representation, right? And like what we deem the outlier or the rarity. Right. So same thing, if an African founder on a global stage like is experiencing a difficulty, we feel it very personally, because we feel like, not many African founders get to this point that you've gotten to, and now you're there, and what you're doing could further impact us. Right. So it's a thing about representation and what party is the minority. Right. So that concept of, if something is happening, people point it out in this way, would always happen for every minority group. Do you get what I'm saying? So like, for instance, SB, these guys are FTX, right? They defrauded then Homes, Theranos, they do all these things. But when it comes to an African founder, you see people pointing out that an African founder did this because we don't have that privilege, right, to be able to exercise in this way. So that's why it's being highlighted, right? Yeah.
Well, you're a minority, British born, Nigerian, depends, right? British Nigerian, when you're Nigerian, it depends. So there's a saying that says, when I'm right, no one remembers. When I'm wrong, no one forgets. So it's still, once you're the minority, when I'm in the UK, I help someone, I said, tell them it's a Nigerian that helped you. I used to do that a lot of times. That's why my name's already Nigerian. I was hopefully doing things that are sensible on the internet there. So I think most people do not understand the responsibility they have beyond themselves when they're a minority. So there are many things when you go, if you're a black founder, if you're a female, or if you're an outlier, you should realize that you're there beyond yourself. Co-founder conflict, according to YC, is the number one destroyer of startups. So it's not a new thing. At least it was a good thing that it was not a scandal of fraud. But it's unfortunate that it was not. There was no way to resolve it. I think there was no way to resolve it. There are a lot of things that, of course, happen behind the scenes that the Britain Free have spoken about. But hopefully, there will be a proper postmortem as regards what really happened and why were there no conflict resolutions there. Like, why couldn't one person just walk away? Why would you shut down everything? It makes no sense. It's unfortunate, but it's what it is. We'll have to have different types of stories. And
of course, with 54G, of course, they started on such a high, raised $45 million. The CEO and co-founder, Dr. Abbas Obong, he's no longer there anymore. He's left to go start his own thing. But recently, they announced that even after he was replaced, just based on internal wranglings and allegations of misappropriation, that everything was going to go fine. They were going to try again. And of course, recently they announced that they were filing for bankruptcy. So what did you think in this particular case? Because I thought, like during COVID, for example, if you were traveling out of Nigeria, you definitely engage with fraud. So that was a problem.
I think they made too much money. And what happens is, when you start making so much money, you stop being accountable and you deviate from your core. They were supposed to sequence the African gene, and parts of that, probably when you're doing blood testing, etc., you could get some genome or whatever it is, samples that you could get XYZ from. What there was just a lot of money during COVID times, but why I was so surprised that it was very liquid. Again, we're not being told the complete story, and tech media, they just sit down and receive press releases. They just sit down and right. So we should hear these stories. The book, it should be a book. I asked people, Konga Jumia, right? Why is there no story behind? What really happened? Sim said one or two things. Has anybody got to sit down with him? Right? That's hard work. It's fortune. This is the best time to get stories. Where's acrimonious? right? This is better to get story. This person said it's a lie. This is what already happened. You go back and change a few things and you get the whole story. So what really happened? How did 54Jane fail, right? They had a lot of money. Of course, they hired a lot of people and they were paying monstrous amounts, but they were making a lot of money. So what really happened? How did they miss their way? Because again, what they said doing blood testing and have that became a testing company of some sort. How did they miss their way? What was the consequence? What did the board members try to do, etc.? So I think more stories are there that should be uncovered. I hope it will be uncovered so we'll learn from it. It's difficult, again, it's difficult to actually do stuff, but we should learn from it so we don't repeat the mistakes. But it's hard to really comment on some of these things without proper context, apart from what we see on the news, which is probably from one side or one perspective.
Yeah.
So the work has to be done to
So what do you think is actually holding back these kinds of contexts, right? Because sometimes when you're in certain spaces, you tend to hear what it is that people say is happening or what went down. But like when it actually comes down to putting those words of paper, it's much harder to actually like get something from somebody without them saying, okay, this is off the record.
I think also very rarely there's that many people actually know the whole story. So you're kind of working on supposition a lot of the time. And that's quite tricky as well to piece then everything together. And then especially when it's like a big, multi-million-dollar fallout next to it, people don't necessarily want to say something where they could also get sued as well. And the trouble is that we saw recently someone leaked a story to an outlet, but actually this person was quite junior. And they're not 54Gene at all. But this person was quite junior and they didn't actually know or understand the data in the deck that they were handling. So they passed it on to a journalist and the journalist was like, wow, this is a juicy story. But it literally didn't make sense. So I spoke to the founder and I was like, I said, literally don't know where this data has come from. And so the trouble is then you've got people who think that they know the story and they think that they've got some data, but it's completely wrong. And then they cause a big like media storm because the media loves a story like this as well. But actually in that case can cause more harm than damage. So I think sometimes, especially, with the fallout of Pivo, with, other companies kind of shutting down as well, sometimes they probably can't say something. For some people, it might be too soon. Other people might feel like, right, they have to keep moving on. But actually, they do have to tell those stories at some point because we all have to learn from them as well. And, learn from the pitfalls and the dramas and the board fallouts and the dealing with staff and the expensive, infrastructure. No, you said that 54Gene, they just raised an awful lot of money, but what they were doing and their product was expensive as well. Huge amount of money. So huge investments going into like what they had to do in order to sequence genomes. And if you look at companies that are equivalent in the West, they raise hundreds of millions as well. So I think we have to remember that kind of scale of what we're trying to do. Like if you think about even say Irocco raised, I think, $40 million. They think how much Netflix have raised as well over the years as well. But people are like, well, Netflix made it. Why didn't Irocco scale to that height yet? And you're making like peculiar comparisons and you just can't as well. So we need more people like Oo who will tell us the stories. We need more people like Jason who will also tell us the stories, warts and all. But they have to do it in their own time as well.
What you see, you have too many bloggers in tech media, not enough journalists. But I see the journalists are really serious these days, West, yeah. So that's what's happening. The waiting for food is ready. He didn't tell me.
I've had conversations before where you say, like, sometimes these kinds of stories should not be the things that we're always highlighting.
It's context. So I'm not highlighting, 54Gene, they squandered money. I'm highlighting, hey, a CEO runs amok, how do you bring him back together? So it depends on how you phrase it. So you can have facts, but how you position those facts is what matters. Like I said, too many bloggers, not enough journalists. Tell them I said so.
So, June, I want to ask you, because when the bankruptcy was announced, there were people who were saying, especially some investors, that were saying that now it's going to make it hard for investments to come into this sector. So are you hearing like those things as well?
I don't think people are saying that no investment needs to go into that sector going forward. I think the scrutiny will be higher. But we do need a 54Gene. I think this business is still necessary. We just need to have leaders in place that will manage the funds because they raised enough money. I feel like they should have done a lot more with that funds. But then there's also responsibility on the board members. I think board members should be chosen very carefully. And we should not hire incompetent founders. We shouldn't have competent people running businesses. More checks have to be done. Like, can they actually manage this process? And if not, hire the right people in. But there is funding that still needs to happen into healthcare.
In that same space, okay. And then the last two are LaserPay and Zazu. We're just gonna put them together because they shut down for like similar reasons, right? They just did not have funds to proceed. When they shut down, many people said that it was just an idea or a startup that had come before its time. So do you believe like that was the situation as well?
At the time, we were seeing a lot of investment in crypto startups, right? I mean, there was a coincidence of the crash, FTX, etc. But at that time, I feel like, the kind of ecosystem activity that was going on around LaserPay, Nestcoin, all the other crypto startups that were in that space could support even some proof of concept that would last long enough to maybe raise the next round, right? So I don't think LaserPay in itself came before its time, except we want to say maybe crypto acceptance products came before their time, or like crypto products in Africa came before their time. And I'm sure many founders in that space are not like that, because people always use crypto as a way to leapfrog fiat money, and Africa is doing that. So I wouldn't say like a LaserPay came before its time, or LaserPay in this case came before its time, right? Except if everybody wants to say crypto acceptance products and stuff came before their time. Yeah.
Okay, Jude, I'm going to ask you about this because Zazu, London-based Fintech company, Africa-born, marketplace for African remittance companies, and they raised more than $2 million, but then announced recently that they could not proceed because they could not raise more money. And in my mind, and sometimes you need money to scale, but a lot of the things that people were saying when this happened was, should you be looking to raise more money or should you be looking to generate revenue? So what did you think in this particular case?
I think there is a tendency, and there has been, because there was a lot of money for a long period of time, to just rely on the next fundraise and say, well, we're focusing on the build. Actually, you need to be focusing on who's going to pay for these products. Are you actually building a product that people value and there's a strong need for? And I think we got a little bit lost in this sort of funding craze to realize that unless someone's willing to pay for it, then actually it's not got legs to stand on.
Yeah.
So I think it's forcing everyone to really think about the value proposition.
And is this something that investors are actually actively doing as well, helping founders realize that you're not always going to come to us to give you money, you have to actually go make profit?
Exactly. This is why the bar has been set a little bit higher, and you want to see a little bit more traction before investing. Like, we're definitely, thinking about that.
Top 5 shockers that rocked the headlines: Dash, Float, Patricia, Tingo, Payday. What are your thoughts?
The Tingo. I think we have to clear something. Tingo is not one of us. It's very important that.
But Dozy was going around calling Tingo a startup.
I'm French. Parlez-vous français? So anyone can call themselves anything, and he was not one of us. So it's very important that we do not try to create an association, right? We should just clear it as quickly as possible. Fraud is fraud. The day it came out, Bloomberg wrote nonsense. And I told my people at Bloomberg, why are you guys whitewashing this thing? And everyone reached out to Bloomberg and they kept it all there. I don't know what went behind the scenes. No, don't hold me for libel. But what I'm just trying to say is that he's not one of us. He never was, and I don't know if he will ever be, if he can come out of that. But it's just, let's be clear on that, right? That's pure fraud. The Renan Mokri's business partner, it's important to point that out. It was very PEP heavy from the beginning. We've seen the press releases, so no need to spend time on that. Dash, the prince from Ghana, prince past prince. Now, the thing about Dash is that I saw the initial deck, very interesting proposition, but they gave him more money, and they're coming back to say, we don't know what's going on, what happened. So there are a lot of questions for the investors that put in so much money. I don't know a lot of local investors were in the first round, I heard, and the external people are the ones that brought a lot of money into the company. And so they should be asking themselves questions, not saying, hey, investing in Africa is hard. you do rubbish, you don't do DD, you don't ask people within the ecosystem, and you're surprised that you're taken for a fool or taken to the cleaners. As regards float, I think from what we have heard, there's a level of, this thing goes from ignorance to pure fraud like Tingo. Maybe there's a level of carelessness. You lend money, you play with this thing, you play with your technical head doesn't mean you know everything about treasury. And I think we need to learn more about that, what happened with float or what's happening with float. I think it's still a going concern, I'm not too sure, and I hope it is. So we need to scrutinize it. The media, you should have beats. You don't jump from one story to the other, you follow a story to the end. Patricia is tricky. Again, I would say it's not one of us. Maybe if it was very fraudulent, I would have denied it immediately. But I would say, again, the level of carelessness, when things are going well and people drive Teslas, start asking questions. Could you have used that for a bit more security so you don't get hacked? And things go wrong. So Patricia, again, more scrutiny of what's happening, how they're trying to resolve it. It seems that there's no coherence. Startups have challenges, but it's important to see how they react to the challenges when an industry where we tackle problems. The last one was what, please? Payday. So the perspective of Payday is, I'll look at it from Bitmama's acquisition. I'm a fan of Votes. I've known her for so, I don't know if you're top past 5, but what I'm saying is that she looks so unassuming, right? And for her to have been able to acquire this, I think for the Payday story, maybe I'm biased because I know some of the actors, but I would look at it from the perspective of it wasn't allowed to go to zero. It could have easily gone to zero, like we have seen in other parts of the other segments that companies were shut down, right? So if the founder was humble enough to trade, right, versus saying I will just hold it till it goes to zero. If Ruth was able to say, do you know what, this thing is a bit dicey. Do you know what, let me acquire it and see what we can make out of it. I think that's the bigger story. Female founder, crypto, CEO, that's hit all the metrics for any DAI graph, right? But she's a very competent founder and she has been there for a very long time. So I would like to see what her plans are there for Payday. And again, I've been pushing the media. They should be talking to her, not just cover, hey, scandal, Payday shut down, Payday are sold. What's next? Why did you put your hand in this fire, right? Ruth, what are you saying that none of us are saying? And so I think it's a positive spin. It says that it didn't go to zero. And let's see where she can take it from there.
Yeah, I'm going to be having a conversation with her next year. I'd reached out to her after the acquisition announcement hit the press, and she had agreed, but then said a lot was going on. So we will talk next year just to get in the weeds of the story, because I think that a lot of what happened with Payday was also founder driven as well. And the fact that they were able to pull off an acquisition is just a testament in itself, because it could have gone to zero, So that was also one of the things that was pretty big news, just in terms of how it played out.
The bigger question for me, in the last two segments, talked about scandal, shutdown, and we've seen some things fall into founder conflict or governance practices. And from what I know, this is an OG here, many people don't set up boards until later stages in their companies. And I'm wondering, should we rethink that approach and maybe start having boards based on maybe the amount of money people have raised? If money tends to now make people behave in a way they won't have behaved if they were bootstrapping and stuff like that. Because I think some of the either founder conflicts or other quote unquote mismanagement could have been helped or handled by a somewhat competent board. Of course, not a board that would belabor and prevent people from moving or prevent the founder and CEO from having the right to execute as fast as they want as a small company. But I feel like we should probably start looking at, the responsibility we're placing on a founder or on a founding team, and, the kind of support, institutionalized support that they're getting to be able to run their startup to success. And then the second thing is poor treasury management. I see a lot of developers in the ecosystem. I see a lot of even business people, but there are some technical finance functions that I don't see many of my friends in, and I don't know where to find the best treasury people. Yes, you can go to Stanbic or go to any bank to pick their treasury people, but I think, that kind of niche, I'm thinking, how do we actually upskill, or how do we actually get the best people?
I think founders should know that you cannot hack everything. You don't become a senior dev, because you can become a senior dev in 6 months these days. You just go and hire people for domain experience. And on where? You mentioned any of the banks. They have a lot of treasury functions. You understand? You recruit, you hire. The thing is that most founders think that because they can compile Java, that means they can do everything. And once you can accept that, I know companies that, I won't mention names, but trading in billions of naira, no accountants, not even a bookkeeper. So it's the level of, you think that you can plug an API and put it into Excel and go on Udemy and learn accounting in 1 week, So that's what is happening. So I don't think we lack treasury skills in Nigeria at all.
I just don't think it's mainstream. I don't see a lot of people in that field, or I don't see like it being very accessible. Because what I've seen is some startups try to go hire from abroad and bring people who are maybe at later stage companies to come and do this thing for their own startup. But then that becomes expensive. And we've seen a couple of startups pull out from hiring and paying people outside their home markets. So I think, as we drive the whole, founder
function of the investor. You see, we have many care characters, we don't have many investors. So the thing is that one of the things the board or the investors help you do with is hiring. So you give somebody $33 million or whatever it is, and you're not asking how the person would manage it. Did you not see the organogram? Did you not look at it? Did you ask for the team? You understand? So again, why we blame founders? But was it Tyson that said, what did you expect? You give a 21-year-old how many millions of dollars? What did you expect? You yourself, use your own head, So that's what is happening. So you give somebody I don't know what I'll do with $3 million. So I just dig it and put it in the ground. I'm just telling you, how best do I manage it? Do I give my money to any of these big banks? So while we keep on harping on the founders, we have to start putting main responsibility. We're talking of the media. We're talking of the investors.
Yeah.
You understand? We're talking of other players,
But it also comes back to the founders as well, because that's such a good point. But what's stopping them saying, I actually don't know what I'm going to do with this $33 million?
There's no downside. It's not my money.
But surely if they're competent founders, they can actually understand where their strengths are, but also then they say, actually, this is when I need to put together a team, and then they need to.
But that's where the investor should say, I'm not giving you the money. And actually, I won't invest in a business if I do not see strength within the people in front of me. Actually, I need to speak to someone in the team who is going to know what to do with that money. I need to see a financial plan. I need to believe that you are going to deploy this money as we're discussing. Yeah. Half the time, people come and they say, oh no, we'll do it later. I'm like, no, why would I give you money? You're just going to play. Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that I wanted to find out from you as well is, so that specifically, they raised $6.1 million in 5 years, and the CEO was allegedly paying himself $50K per month. How is it possible that investors didn't cut that?
Yeah, that to me feels completely irresponsible, but there is no way they didn't see that. And if they saw that, they should have called it out, because that makes no sense to me. There is no founder in any of the companies I've ever invested in that is paying themselves that much money. Okay. Completely irresponsible.
Top 5 startup rankings: Smile ID, Acquire and Approve, PiggyVest, Flutterwave, MoneyPoints, and Paystack. It was a hard year, but some startups came out on top. So the first one, Smile ID, acquired, approved. PiggyVest dominated the digital savings space by paying out $1.42 billion in 6 years. Flutterwave had a product year. They renovated Send, launched Swap, Tuition, and wrapped up licenses like Infinity Stones in Rwanda, Egypt, Kenya, Malawi. Also expanded into the US. And of course, the CEO joined the CEO of Microsoft, IBM, DocuSign on the Wall Street Journal CEO Council. And of course, MoneyPoint had a great year, moved into retail banking, launched a consumer app and debit card, and Paystack launched a direct debit feature, despite having layoffs, but they still had a really, really great year. So I'm going to start with you, Jess. Who came out on top for you?
They all had good years, and I'm a bit biased because we worked with them before, but I think Piggy Vests. I think they continue to just be a lean, interesting, product-first, consumer-first company.
Yes. Ogo, what about you?
I have my pay stack biases, but it's now pay stack by Stripe, so I don't care about Stripe. So I would say Piggy Vest. Piggy Vest has, so I think, I don't know how much they have raised, but it's a ridiculously small amount in context, right? And so I think to be consistently there, to keep improving, I think there's kudos. Yes, I'm impressed with what every other person has done, Flutterwave, Paystack, my homies, right? But I would say it's expected of them now at the level at which they're operating. So I'll choose Piggy Vest.
All right. June?
I'm sensing consensus here, but honestly, I also have to say, Odun is incredibly impressive. I think it just also shows, and I think it's more important about this lesson that they're ultimately displaying. It's possible to build with little, and actually they've really focused on a strong product people actually care about, people want to use it, people are making money from it, and I think it's a great lesson sort of all around that build something people want and you'll do well.
Alrighty. Ben?
I have my money point bias, but I think I would have chosen Piggy Vest if they exited. My pick is going to be approved because from a capitalist point of view, in a year where there have been, few exits and stuff, Approve was able to return money to investors with the Smile ID acquisition.
Was it cash?
Well, in whatever way, but it's like the acquisition is definitely not a merger, right? So it's a bigger company acquiring a smaller company. I think they would be my startup of the year.
Alrighty. And of course, my own too is Piggy Vest. Had a stellar year. They've been having a great year for the last 6 years. I also interviewed Odun, who is the COO, on Backstories of Fatu, shameless plug. So go check it out on YouTube. And of course, through that story, you can actually learn and hear about their journey to get to where they are. So number one startup this year, Piggy Vest. Congratulations. Okay, so most exciting predictions. And this particular segment is panelist driven. And we're all going to be talking about, what our exciting predictions are for next year. It's almost like, let's wheel it into next year. This year was kind of hard. Let's manifest something exciting next year. So I'll start with you, Ben. What's your prediction for next year?
My prediction for next year is that I would see more regulation from CBN for cross-border and remittance players.
Positive regulation?
Just regulation itself, because right now it's a bit unclear, this space, right? You have an IMTO, but you still need a letter of no objection. You still need to have a banking partner. You still people are just doing what they're doing. Like the IMTO, for instance, retail is not really for business, but people are using it for business. Point is, with the deployment rate or the shipping rate of the CBN, every day there's one circular they've been posting the last 3 weeks. So I'm hoping that energy is going to come into that TED department, or the Trade and Exchange department, to bring out clearer regulations for that cross-border and remittance space. So that's one thing that will be exciting for me.
All righty. And June, what about you?
I actually think there's going to be a lot more consolidation in the ecosystem. Unsurprisingly, I think we're starting to see the early stages of that. Will be more collaboration. I love the collaboration between Eden Life and Chowdeck. I think maybe, I think there's going to be, it'll probably be driven by investors, encouraging their startups to sort of think outside the box. I think it'll put them in a stronger position to be ready for, exits in the future.
Right. Jess, what about you?
So I agree with June. I think more collaboration and potentially mergers, etc. Again, it might just help some of these companies scale a little bit faster rather than starting from scratch. But I think as part of that, it's also, again, stemming a bit from the VCs, but we need to get more founders who understand how to actually generate revenue outside of raising money. And I think that we haven't seen people who actually know how to make money. One of my favorite new business conversations is when I speak to a CEO and he was like, I'm really sorry, but we haven't actually raised any money, but we're profitable. And you're like, okay, where did that apology come from? Because the kind of narrative has been about VC raising money, money, money. So I think that with more collaboration and more mergers and acquisitions, potentially, hopefully some companies will be able to start at least breaking even. And on that journey, some founders will actually figure out how to make money, and that making money and generating maybe profit is not a dirty word.
Amen. Exciting prediction.
So there are two angles to it. It's just the trend. So I won't call it prediction, but the trend for sales-driven companies would increase, right? Excited, I don't know, but one founder will go to jail. If they're not careful. It's very important. We need to send a very good signal. But we're going to see a bit of tightening of the belts from the VCs because pressure will come in from the LPs. So I won't call it exciting prediction, but I'm saying the trend of things to go. We'll see more resilient companies being built because it will be sales driven. But I think AI will be the word of the year next year. We are tier one. We're the one participants with the AI journey, and we're not too sure of where it will be used. So a lot of fake news, fake this, fake that, but at the same time, there'll be a lot of products being created. So I think AI will be a big deal next year. That will be it. I do not know why, how, but AI will be a big deal next year.
Okay, so not exciting, but prediction. So someone might go to jail.
Reckless founder should go to jail for I think we've seen an investor being arrested here and there, but I think the whole idea that the tech ecosystem is a Wild West will be dispelled next year.
Okay. Well, I was very excited by VFD's IPO this year. I actually thought we were going to have time to talk about it, but we did not. So I'm looking forward to more IPOs next year. So hopefully Flutter scales that process and even just starts with IPO in Nigeria to begin with. And then, of course, to NASDAQ or wherever else. But yeah, I want to see more IPOs. I want to see more exits that are not necessarily like acquisitions, but actually like offering a part of your company to the public so they can buy into it. So yeah, that's my excited prediction for 2024. Tech Personality of the Year. And this particular segment, we're all going to talk about who are Tech Personalities of the Year based on personal, company, and professional performance. And of course, if there's consensus, then that person is the Tech Personality of the Year. If there isn't, I have veto power to say, this is the person, this is my peak. So yeah, I will start with you, June. Who was your Tech Personality of the Year and why?
Yeah, again, no surprise. This person shows up in the ecosystem, and I think she has been a true force, like taking everyone along with her. So unsurprisingly, it's Odun from Piggy Vest. I just think that we need more Oduns out there. Business has done great, but on a personal level, like she's actually just been a great role model for so many.
Ben?
Yeah, my Tech Personality of the Year is PCTimi.
Okay.
From a company point of view, she joined Smile ID and has been with the company through a rebrand, even through like some of the key announcements, including the Approve one, the reports and stuff. And then on a personal point of view, her work in the media space now, the documentary, all of those things I think are impressive. Just to give a late shout out, I was also going to shout out to you because I feel like in the media space, there weren't that many women, and to see you and Peace, I think is really, really exciting.
Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate that. And shout out to you, Peace. Her documentary is coming out today. So I'm rooting for you. And yeah. Who's your Personality of the Year?
No, this is not by bias. This is by meritocracy. Okay. Right? My man Shola, I will explain to you why. You see, there is this whole idea of the exit and going to the beach and retiring. But that being able to succeed and go into another dimension, football, and take a club from inception to the Premier League of Nigerian football, multi-dimensional success. So he has now gone from being the tech personality in tech to tech personality in multiple spheres. It's a big deal, right? Then again, Paystack is back to innovating. They deployed the virtual POSs, right? Launched Paystack Titan integration, and they did the integration with NIBS for direct debits the same year, while handling a layoff of closing offices in the same year, right? So it just, for me, I put a lot of pressure on we know the hear of Paystack again. And to see that 2023, a lot of rejuvenation in an election year where there was no cash for the first half of the year. So I think he has done quite a lot. So it's more like returning from the brink. So it's easy for you to fizzle out after an exit. But 3 years after an exit, you're still inventing in a company that there should be no motivation, right? And succeeding and pioneering in another sphere, football, there's no relationship, and succeeding and representing us well. So it's giving a different type of vibe. So any day, he has my 3 votes.
Jess, how about you?
So mine is someone who's involved in the ecosystem, and it's Nwoye from Tech Cabal. And I'll tell you why. So I've been working in the African tech space for 10, 11 years, I think. So Tech Cabal is like one of my earliest kind of, I guess, partners in crime stakeholders. So from the days of like Shea and Bankole to what Nwoye has taken Tech Cabal to now. And I think the pinnacle was really Moonshot Conference. Fatu, you were there.
Yes.
You were central to it. You were the hostess with the mostess. But just seeing an event of that scale in Lagos for 2 days, it was packed out. It was so well done. There was so many amazing personalities. So I think that he's managed to kind of package and build a product around the Tech Cabal brand, as well as really drilling down and deepening their sort of journalistic work as well, like longer format stories. It's not just, fundraise. They've done some really, really solid newsroom work as well. And we know that there's not a huge amount of funding that goes into media startups. So that's really tough. I think they had to make some layoffs earlier on in the year as well. Again, really tough, but they did it in a really sensible, classy way. And then, as I say, they continue to build and have journalistic rigor, as well as then looking at how to build the business and actually, again, I'm guessing make money as a company as well. And that is down to Nwoye.
When you said that, I made that face because he's also my tech personality of the year. Yeah, I mean, with everything you said, I remember before he showed up at Tech Cabal, they were almost dying, right? But he came and he turned things around, and he's just been able to innovate. And of course, Moonshots was just fantastic, and I can't wait to see what they do with that moving forward. And they really have a really great and passionate team that's so driven about the business, and they really do care about the work that they put out. So yeah, shout out to Nwoye. You are the tech personality of the year. And of course, everybody else that was listed, you guys are all personalities of your own right. So congratulations to you too. Okay, so top product of the year. And as with the previous segments, we're going to go around and see what our top products are and why. If there's consensus, that is the top product of the year. If there isn't, okay, so I will start with you, Jess. What was your top product of the year and why?
So again, I'm slightly biased, but I got my first Nigerian bank account this year, and it was a Sparkle one. Ooh. And it works really well. Okay. And it was easy to someone sent me some money, and it was really easy to buy stuff. My friend took me shopping in Lekki, bought some earrings. I think I even paid for this dress. I had someone make me a dress. And the product just really worked, and it was great and seamless and intuitive. So yeah, Sparkle app.
Okay. June, what about you?
Well, the one I use almost daily is Steers. I don't know if many people have used it.
Like Steers app, like Steers Insights?
Yeah, I'm big on news, and I get my news. Yeah, let's go Preston.
You just got married. Congratulations. Okay, are you?
I'm biased about, say, the MoneyPoint POS. Okay. Everybody has built POSs like, PTSPs, permanent terminal service providers, but, to be known for your reliability, in a space where, there are a couple of middlemen, even though not too many for POS, but I think the team at MoneyPoint has done a good job. Yeah.
Okay. My product of the year, top product of the year is Chowdeck. I spent some time in Lagos after hosting Moonshots conference by Tech Cabal, and I used that app quite a bit, and also just hearing from people about just user reviews and all of the great things they've done so far. They've had such a great year, especially in a year where other food logistics companies like Jumia Food and Bolt Food are leaving the market, but they are still doubling down and just deeply penetrating the market. So that's my top product.
But the good thing is that the last person chooses. That's the law. Yes. So what happens now is that the last person makes the decision. I kept quiet.
The first time he's ever kept quiet.
Yes, I kept quiet. What I need was me to choose, because the law is that who speaks last chooses.
Oh, Fatu.
That product of the year is, let me find. The reason for that is, looking back.
He got you.
Is it just works. And not that remittance is easy, but I visited about four countries this year within Africa, apart from Nigeria. Of course, I don't like that it's easy to send away money from my account, but I like that I didn't have any challenges transacting in Senegal, in Ghana, in Kenya. So I just had almost like a local bank account. So as a result, Lemfa is the tech personality of the, is the tech product of the, yeah. Yes.
It's a democracy. I can't overrule him. So he was my rule, and I got. So congratulations to Ridwan and Ryan for creating an amazing product, releasing what's the word? Raising $33 million this year and just having a fantastic year.
A rebrand
From Lemonade to Lemfi. You have had a great year. So congratulations on being top product of the year. Sorry, child deck.
But it's very important to point out that I am so impressed because I remember early days, one day we'll talk about the early days, that we could not even talk about products, Nigerian apps we used. There was one time where people were talking like, name one Nigerian app on your phone. At 2017, you didn't have a Nigerian app on your phone. So now we're talking about companies that it's not audio. We're talking of companies that we use daily, weekly, and they're really useful. It's not as if we're compelled to. So I think it's kudos to like anybody that was mentioned here, even those that were not mentioned, right? It's a big, massive stuff.
Yes. Kudos to everybody. And of course, I want to thank Just, Ben, June for elevating this conversation and joining me on our first crossover ever. It's going to be an annual show. So thank you guys so much for elevating the show. And thank you to my incredible sponsor for making this happen. Wouldn't that be possible without you? And it's a wrap. We'll see you next year.